All right, everyone. Welcome to those who are just now joining us at SLU's virtual Girls in Aviation Day. And welcome back to those of you who were with us for that aviation student panel. We are now beginning our career exploration sessions, first with a virtual visit to St. Louis Lambert International Airport, where Airport Director Rhonda Ham-Niebrugge and Airport Construction and Maintenance Manager Elizabeth Smart are joining us. So Ms. Ham-Niebrugge and Ms. Smart, I will turn this over to you now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. It's fun to be here. I think Liz and I have done this at the live ones several times, so nice to be with you virtual. I know time's short, so we're going to go quick. The one I want to talk about is I've been the airport director here since January of 2010, so going on a little over 10 and a half years, and 27 years prior to me coming over to the airport side, I was in the operational side for the airlines. The bulk of my career was at TWA, but ultimately I did retire from American and worked my way up from the very beginning, starting as a customer service agent, going to supervisor to manager, eventually running the hub here in St. Louis, and ultimately became the vice president for TWA's North American airports. So I had 101 airports under my division. I had about 8,000 of the TWA employees. It was the largest department and pushing $1 billion budget. So it was an exciting time. We had a lot of challenges and financially, and ultimately American bought us, and I spent about 8 years with American before retiring in 2009 and coming over to the airport side. I will tell you, when I did not go to college to get into aviation. I had a much different path in mind. Something that I always thought I wanted to do was work in the CIA. And so when I went to the university, it was for business and a foreign language because I thought that would give me the best background to sort of get into the CIA. And as graduation time came near and I needed a job and I was interviewing with the CIA, an opportunity came to go to New York and start with Ozark Airlines, actually, back then in 1982. And I took the job sort of on a whim because I thought it would be fun for a while. And it was in New York, so I thought it would be fun to live in New York for a while. And I think about 2 weeks into the job, I realized that this was a career that I loved. And the excitement every day of being at the airport, the challenges that came, it was just always different. And I never left. I mean, I turned down the next interview as we started moving further down for the CIA, and ultimately just spent the last 37 years of my life in this business. And I will tell you, it's been an absolutely fabulous, rewarding career. There are lots of challenges, and you get involved with things that you never think about. But as an airport, or as on the operational side, and Liz can share this too, we're really a city. As an airport, we are a city in ourselves, and everything that happens at this airport, we are responsible for. So we're responsible for the business side of it. We're responsible for the development side, on the land that we owned, on the facilities, maintaining them, the interaction with the public, the negotiations with the airlines, finance. And we have our own sign department, finance department, airfield maintenance department, properties department. I mean, you don't think of all the things as an airport that you have, but the opportunities to get into aviation in so many different paths, and paths that you can cross over. As I said, the first 27 years, I was on the airline side running large operations. And when I decided to retire and this opportunity to the airport side came over, yes, they were very similar in that they were both aviation related, and I had always been involved with running airports. But when I came to the airport side, it was a totally new adventure. And, I think for people, especially young women wanting to come into this field, there is such a push in the industry to help women gain status, and not just on entry level, but all the way up to the executive level. We're fortunate here in that a great deal of our team is female. You'll talk to Liz in just a minute, but we have other females on the team as well in airports across the country. I think there's only about 15, 16 women airport directors, but it's some of the largest airports in the country. So places like Chicago, places like Denver, Salt Lake City, those had all been run by women. DCA used to be run by a woman. JFK used to be run by a woman. But there are women that run a lot of the really large airports in the country, and it's a good financial job. It's a great job in terms of the experience and the exposure you can get. You know, to sit here and say that there's not days when you pull your hair out would be, a little bit, I think, of a misnomer. But what I will tell you is that every day is different. And I think that's what has kept me in this business for so long. Every day is so exciting and it's different. And if you want a career path that takes you in a lot of different angles, if you want a career path that affords you the opportunity to really make some very challenging, tough decisions, uh, this is, I mean, this is what we do every day. We have to come into work every day, anticipate what might happen, but know that by the end of the day something totally different has happened. And so I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would hope that, as you hear from different people throughout the day, that you will see that there is a breadth of opportunity in all forms and fashions in aviation, things that you might not normally think of. So I see that it's 10:06. I need to turn my time over to Liz so that she can talk a little bit about her background, and then we'll let Amy see if there's times for Q&A.
Thanks, Rhonda. Good morning. My name is Liz Smart. I am the airport's construction and maintenance manager. I'm responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the airport's facilities, which is comprised of 1.5 million square feet of terminal and concourse space and over 160 buildings. And I could not do all of this without my amazing team of building maintenance workers, HVAC techs, electricians, housekeepers, and engineering techs that help me keep all of these facilities operational. I love doing this job because there are no 2 days that are ever the same. The work's fast-paced. I get to work with talented and diverse individuals from across the airport, including the airlines and concessionaires. And best of all, I get to work at an international airport. So growing up, my parents traveled a lot, which is how I caught the aviation bug. I knew I wanted a career in aviation, but I wasn't sure which field, so I went to an aerospace camp at the University of North Dakota when I was a junior in high school. This camp allowed me to sample a variety of aviation fields, including flying small and acrobatic airplanes, flying helicopters, simulating air traffic control, aeronautical engineering and space exploration, and spending a day at an international airport. From that experience, I knew I wanted to work in an airport. As there are so many different types of jobs at an airport, when I was a senior in high school, I called Lambert and set up a one-day job shadow. I was assigned to shadow the public relations department. Half the day was spent visiting the various airport departments, and the other half of the day was spent putting together decorations for the grand opening ceremony of Terminal 2. As determining what doesn't interest you is just as important as what does, I realized through this job shadow experience that public relations was not for me. But the excitement of responding to airfield and terminal issues with the sounds of aircraft constantly landing and departing in the background was perfect. I knew I wanted to start my aviation career in the Airport Operations Center. When I was a junior in college, I interned at Lambert's Op Center. After graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Daytona Beach, with a degree in business administration and an area of concentration in airport management, my first real airport job was as an airport operations specialist in none other than Lambert's Operations Center. A few years into my career, I participated in an internal intern program created by former Lambert Airport Director Dick Rabko. The program, which lasted several months, allowed me to shadow Mr. Rabko and learn more about the roles and responsibilities of an airport director. Mr. Rabko also encouraged me to continue learning about all facets of the airport industry, to become an expert in the field, and to earn my airport executive designation. This experience was invaluable and helped me chart my future course in the airport industry. I also took his advice and in 2009 earned my airport accredited designation. All told, I've been in the airport industry for 18 years, 16 of which have been right here at Lambert Airport. As stated before, there are so many different types of jobs at an airport. So following Mr. Rabko's advice, in addition to my current role, I've been an airport operations specialist, as I stated before, a property specialist managing airport concessions like food and beverage and news and gift units, and a safety management system coordinator responding to safety concerns on the air side and land side. I've also been the assistant airport director at a small airport in Iowa and the airfield supervisor in Antarctica. So my parting thought here to all of you is the aviation industry is full of opportunities, even just within the small airport subsection of the industry. I would encourage all of you to take advantage of aviation camps, introductory flight lessons, internships, and one-day job shadows to see what this industry has to offer and where your passions lie so you can get paid to do something you love every day.
Oh, thank you both so much for your presentations and providing that insight. Do we have time for questions now? We got about 5 minutes. Are both of you open to some questions? Okay, so if you have any questions for Ms. Ham-Newbergy or Ms. Smart, please go ahead and submit those now. But I have one for each of you. So you each have had such an interesting and differing career in aviation. Can you just talk about what your day-to-day at Lambert looks like now? Is it a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 or what's going on? You're muted, sorry.
Muted too. You do come in with the thought of saying, okay, like on Mondays, you know, I've got executive staff meeting at 10, I've got a broader staff meeting at 2. And, you know, we talk about the week, we talk about any projects going on, we talk a lot about COVID right now. We talk a lot about, you know, each department and what's kind of the focus of this week. But inevitably, something will change throughout the day. So I think when you think, and that's what is so fun and exciting to me about this job, when you come in every day, yes, you may be planning, you know, right now we're so focused on the finances with COVID and obviously the changes of the passenger traffic. So you're very focused on that. But at the same time, we had a lot of construction projects that were going to be underway this year because we were growing and we were in a growth mode. And so, you know, we stopped about $21 million worth of projects that were ongoing, but there were other projects that we said we absolutely have to do these. So, you know, I think whether it's talking about the airfield side and making sure that the airfield is safe, whether it's talking about the facility side and making sure that the customer experience is meeting the expectations. And right now with COVID, and Liz will tell you, every day is a change for her. She's kind of responsible for all the internal signage that we have relative to COVID. And, you know, it changes every day. So it's hard to say what's a typical day. But you do plan your week with certain meetings and certain schedules, and then you know along the way you have to be flexible. I'll let Liz respond.
I would agree. I don't know from day to day what's going to happen or what I'm going to be faced with, and that's why I like this job so much. As a matter of fact, it could be a water main break, it could be making more signs, it could be changing out hand sanitizers, it could be looking for new cleaning techniques, it could be a roof leak. So it allows me to think creatively outside the box, and that's what I really enjoy. And it's definitely not a 9 to 5 job. It's I get calls on the weekend and just respond because I like the facility so much.
Yeah, or you have something, you know, you have a generator that goes out, or you have a circuit that goes out, and your bag system goes out, and all those things are so reliant on every day keeping this place running. I mean, as a consumer walking through, you don't think about that. As the airport team, that's what we live and breathe every day, is responding to those challenges. And rarely does a day go by where there's not some failure of some sort. And the team is very in depth and very equipped to say, okay, let's respond, let's move it, let's get going. And that's what we do. And hopefully the customer never notices it, but sometimes they do. So I will tell you, the airport side, and it was very much like the airline side as well on the operation. There's so much into running an operation behind the scenes, which is where I think the excitement and the you know, the opportunities exist if you're interested in getting into aviation on the operational side, whether it be in the airline or whether it be on the airport. There's just hundreds of different ways to get in and hundreds of ways to grow once you're in it.
Oh, I agree. Yes, it's something so fascinating about the industry to me is all of the moving parts and how somehow they line up for each flight or each day at the airport. It's hugely collaborative and with a huge team of people. So thank you both for taking time out of your schedules to join us this morning. I definitely learned so much, and I'm so grateful that both of you were here. So with that, we're gonna venture somewhere else. We are gonna go to across the river into Cahokia, Illinois, and visit. We'll be visiting Ideal Aviation over there, which is a flight school at St. Louis Downtown Airport. That's the same airfield that SLU Parks College is on. And so it is lovely to be joined today by Becca Sewell and Christina Cannell. And I think we're going to be learning more about preparing for aviation careers. And so I will turn it over to both of you now.
Hello everyone, my name is Becca Sewell. I'm the office manager at Ideal Aviation, which as Amy said is a flight school over at St. Louis Downtown Airport in Cahokia. Here is Christina Cannell. I'll have her introduce herself in just a minute, but just so you guys know what we're doing today, we're going to be going over a list of frequently asked questions that I receive at Ideal about people who want to start their career in aviation, not sure how, wanting to know what the beginning steps are. My background is that I studied with Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, their aviation management program. So since we both are pilots, I'm a commercially rated pilot working on my certified flight instructor rating. We both have a bias towards pilots, so we're going to try to show all the different facets of aviation because they are endless and amazing. So without further ado, we'll have Christina introduce herself.
Hi guys, great to be here. Thank you all for being here. So excited about today. My name is Christina Cannell. I went to actually St. Louis University. So I have been kind of part of this Girls in Aviation Day before, and I'm so excited that you guys are all back. I studied flight science, so specifically I did get a degree in flying at St. Louis University. Very much enjoyed the program there, and through there I got all of my licenses and ratings, and now I'm a certified flight instructor just across the ramp from the SLU hangar at Ideal. And we're going to just talk about how we got into the industry, what made us interested in it, and any questions that you may have. So first question, I'm going to ask Becca because she's going to answer this one. What first steps do you suggest for someone who is interested in aviation but has no idea where to start?
Well, if you're interested in aviation, doing events just like this one, the Women in Aviation, Girls in Aviation Day, is a great place to start because it can help open your eyes to all the different things in aviation. For instance, when I first started out, I thought I want to be an airline pilot for sure. That's what I want to do. But then as time progressed and I learned more about the industry, I was like, oh, well, there's corporate flying, there's charter, there's so many options. So I suggest that you join local organizations like Women in Aviation, or there's the 99s for women. There's Whirly Girls if you're interested in helicopter flying. There's the National Business Aviation Association if you're interested in more the management aspect, like maybe not wanting to be a pilot, but still want to be working in aviation, running airlines, etc. There's also the Professional Aviation Maintenance Association if you're not interested in flying the planes, but maybe how to fix them or put airplanes together, etc. So I suggest trying to find an organization that you can be a part of. And also to find a mentor if you can, if there's somebody that you know or your family knows that you can really talk to and get good understanding of how the aviation industry works. That's huge. I was very fortunate enough to find great mentors as I started my career, and I still am so thankful for them today. So that's what I would suggest. If you're also just need to be in the aviation industry, to start somewhere small at your local airport, finding a job. Maybe it's just customer service, but or a line service, so fueling up airplanes, cleaning airplanes are hangars, it's always great to get your foot in the door somewhere. Additionally, you can try to find online ground schools or different training courses online, and that's a great way to start getting that general knowledge, because there's a lot to learn in aviation. So if you can start now while you're in high school, that is awesome, and you'll be leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else who is just not putting in the work yet. They're not quite ready. So if you start now, it will give you so many rewards. So Christina, since you are a flight instructor, what would you say a typical flight lesson is like?
So when you do go out to start flying an airplane, if you are interested in that, maybe just want to see if you like it, you usually take what we call a discovery flight. And that first discovery flight is just going to be like some sightseeing. I might have you, or I will have like my students just take the controls and let you take off. It's one of the easiest things to do. So I let my discovery students just take the takeoff. They take off the airplane, and we go out to an area where it's not very busy, typically not over like a big city or something. So if anything does happen, we have plenty of space. But if you really like that discovery flight, you can start taking lessons at a place just like Ideal Aviation. And a typical lesson would be going out to what we call the practice area, and that's a big open space where we go out and just practice different types of maneuvers, is what we call them. And maneuvers are all different kinds of climbs, turns, descents, stuff like that, and also emergencies. If you are wanting to train to be a pilot, one of the huge things that actually we practice is dealing with different types of emergencies. Flying is very, very safe and can be very, very safe. But of course, in the unlikely event of an emergency, we have to know how to be ready for them. So we teach you how to prepare and be ready for any kind of emergency that could come your way. So, and then you would just progress, and as you get better and better, eventually you go and take a test, and then you can become a private pilot. This question is for Becca. What do you suggest aspiring pilots do if they're not able to or can't afford flying right now?
So it's no secret that aviation is expensive. It is expensive to fly airplanes. It's not something that you can learn solely sitting at a desk at school. So there is a high cost involved with it. However, there are so many opportunities for scholarships in the aviation industry. There are so many out there that you just have to put in like 5 minutes effort, Google searching, and you'll find so many. At the end of the seminar today, or a few days after, Amy is going to be sending out an email, and attached to that, I have a list of resources for people who want to fly or they're interested in aviation. Some of that information are scholarship links. So basically all you have to do is click on those links and apply for scholarships. And there are so many out there, especially in the St. Louis area, that they have the scholarships posted and no one applies. So basically you could just be the only person to apply and get your flight training covered or partially covered. So that's what I would suggest to people. If you start now, it's going to benefit you greatly. There's scholarships for every person imaginable. So there's so many just geared for women, as we are trying to get more women into aviation. There's so many for people of color and other minorities, with the Black Pilots of America and the Gay Pilots Association. So I would really strongly suggest that. As well as if you're not able to afford to fly right now, I would suggest trying to find a job at an airport and getting your foot in the door there. A lot of them will have employee discounts, and every little bit helps. So that's what I would suggest for aspiring pilots. Now, Christina, I know you just talked about how you spent your time at SLU, but do you need a college degree to fly? Is that something that is necessary, or is that just going to be another financial burden on people?
So usually you do need some kind of college degree, but it does not need to be in aviation. You can get a degree in whatever you want. All you need typically is a 4-year degree. And when I say typically, I'm thinking of like airlines and stuff like that. They usually require a 4-year degree of any kind. So I did get a degree in aviation, but Becca here, she hasn't. She doesn't have a degree in aviation, but she has one very close. It's the aviation management degree, which is a great backup plan. And that's kind of the idea, is that if you have a degree in psychology, or if you go to like whatever you want, any kind of 4-year degree that you want, you can have that as a backup plan, or you can also implement that into aviation somehow. Aviation needs doctors. There's plenty of doctors that actually are employed by many airlines. And these doctors, what they do is if there's an emergency, some kind of medical emergency on an airplane, they can talk to the flight attendants and talk them through an emergency to deal with, like, somebody's having some kind of, I don't know, some kind of stroke, or I don't know, whatever's going on. They can walk people, the flight attendants, through that emergency. You can be a fashion designer. You can design the next uniform for an airline. You can be a chef. You can make all the food that goes on airline flights, stuff like that. So you can really implement anything. And then Becca also mentioned engineering. You can build and fix airplanes. Huge computer systems. So if you want to go into computer technology of some kind, software systems, stuff like that. So it really is versatile. You can get a degree in anything you want. Certainly don't need one in aviation, but you will need usually some kind of degree. Next question for Becca. What were some challenges that you faced in your training, and how were you able to resolve them?
So some of the challenges I faced was that I come from a family who has absolutely no experience, no background in aviation. So whenever I told people I wanted to fly, they kind of looked at me like, what? Huh? That's so weird. So I faced challenges from that. So not knowing anything about the aviation industry and trying to pull myself up from my bootstraps. So I've helped overcome these challenges by getting good mentors with my CFIs. I've been very fortunate with the instructors at Ideal, and even flying with Christina to get my commercial rating. So as well as the financial aspect, but again, I cannot count on this enough that getting scholarships and applying for them, that is how I overcome the most of the financial burden for aviation. Now, since we're running shorter on time, we'll do our last question, and kind of we'll both answer this one. So if you were not able to fly, Christina, what alternative career path would you take? And would you want to stay in aviation?
Absolutely. I have grown to absolutely love the aviation industry and everything it has to offer. I personally think if I were to not be able to fly anymore for like a medical reason or something, I would actually want to become a firefighter at an airport. They have one at our airport here. All major airports, like larger airports that you fly to vacation and stuff for, or from, they have firefighting teams there, what do you call it? Firehouses there. So I think that's actually what I would want to do. How about you?
If I couldn't fly, I'm very interested in air traffic control. So we have all these airplanes in the airspace all coming in to land and take off at the same airports. So someone has to be in control of all that chaos. So I think that's an awesome career, especially if you love aviation, but you're not so thrilled about the idea of being so far away from home all the time. That's when you can come home every night, be with your family, etc. Otherwise, I also really love from aviation management, airport planning is something that I find very interesting as well. So just to briefly overview, because we're running short on time, just to start your career, find a mentor, join an organization, study, fill out those scholarships, and just do everything you can to make your dreams a reality.
Becca and Christina, that was an amazing compilation of so much information in 15 minutes. I'm so impressed. Thank you for sharing that with all of our viewers. As Becca did say, they have put together a great resource of so many links and next steps that you can take if you're interested in what you heard. And yes, we will be attaching that to an email that you will get after this event. So thank you again from Ideal Aviation. I'm gonna send you guys back this way. And as I pull over our next speakers in just a second. All right, got one. All right, there we go. Okay, so for our next session now, we are joined by Jennifer Brassel, Transportation Security Inspector, and Robert Davis, Screening Inspector from the Transportation Security Administration at Lambert Airport, to tell us more about opportunities for you in aviation security. I will let you both take it away.
Good morning. Okay, I think I'm unmuted and ready to go now. Thanks for having us today. I will start off and talk a little bit about how I am definitely not a traditional person who pursued a career in aviation. Going back 21 years, when I was in school, I was interested in a position in investigations and law. I was at a criminal justice job fair and encountered the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that if you're interested in aviation. And I didn't know what they had to offer, but I stopped and I spoke with the recruiting agents there and got involved in a career that I wouldn't look back on. Since 9/11, our positions have changed a little bit. But initially with FAA, I was a civil aviation security specialist, and our position was to regulate and inspect aviation. So we inspected the commercial airports and airlines. And since 9/11, those positions were transferred over to the Transportation Security Administration, and it's expanded quite a bit as well. I am a supervisory transportation security inspector in Missouri. There's about 27 of us total with the inspectors, and we are responsible for inspecting any type of security of the transportation systems in Missouri. So obviously that's going to include aviation, and that's what I'm going to focus on since you students are interested in aviation. But we are looking at security standards that the airports and airlines must adhere to. And we are also outside the airport environment. And to kind of note what the previous speakers were talking about, we actually go in and meet with flight schools and certified flight instructors to make sure that they're adhering to security standards as well. So our footprint is pretty big. We interact with a lot of entities, not just at the airport, but outside the airport. The aviation arena, really, there's so much that comes together to ultimately affect the security of a flight. And that is our objective, is to make sure that cargo and passengers and even employees that are in the airport and goods that are being delivered to airport, that all of the security requirements are adhered to, so that when the public is showing up at the airport and getting on their flights, that they are all safe and protected. Another thing that the inspectors are really keeping on top of is global intelligence. There's a lot of things going on around the world that can affect the security of our transportation systems. So we are consistently staying up to date on current events and intelligence and how the risk is changing so that we can change how we do business to ensure that our flights are safe. We definitely change our inspection patterns so that the highest risk things are looked at the most frequently. And sometimes the intelligence of what's going on around the world, we hear things that are going on in parts of the world that are really scary, but it can affect us in the United States as well. Something that's interesting, the inspector positions, we do have positions around the world. Not only are inspectors inspecting our domestic flights within the United States, but we also have inspectors staged around the world that are ensuring that flights coming into the United States also meet security standards. Those inspectors travel obviously much more than our domestic inspectors, but it's a really important job that TSA has as well. There's, of course, we want to make sure that any flight that's cleared to go into the United States is good to go. So I wanted to also mention that there's one other position I wanted to mention. I was the supervisor of the program for a while, so I had the opportunity of learning a lot about it. TSA also has explosives detection canine handlers, and if you travel very frequently, you probably will see them screening passengers as you approach our checkpoints. So that's another position within the aviation scheme, and of course the security scheme. There, like Liz and Rhonda mentioned too, there's so many things going on at an airport, and even though we are a traditional pilot, when you begin working at an airport, you do develop a love for the industry and what's going on, and it's an exciting job. I think, like some of the other speakers spoke about, there's different things going on every single day, and especially in security in this day and age, since 9/11, security is of everyone's most importance. But I wanted to mention the canine handler position too, because it's another position within aviation that is critical to our safety and security, and it's very unique. I think a lot of people pursuing jobs in aviation don't think about some of the untraditional positions. I'm going to let Robert introduce himself and his career path, and I think we'll definitely have some time for questions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Davis. I'm a transportation security manager. I started in 2002, right after 9/11, when the Homeland Security was invented or birthed by President George Bush. And I came on and I kind of came up through the ranks. I'm on the operations side of things. So when you enter the airport and you have to see all of our screeners or transportation security officers, I'm over the southwest side of things. So I work hand in hand with Jennifer. Any intel that they get from headquarters and they give it to us, we have to make sure that we're in compliance with everything that's going on, because although it may not seem like it, the threat is definitely real. And what we're doing is what we do on a daily basis, what the officers do, definitely make a difference. We work hand in hand with Rhonda. I know you guys heard from her a little earlier. So it's one cohesive unit. Even though we're separate entities, we're all working together to make sure our travel is safe. So when you get on the airplane, you don't have any worries. Again, I started in 2002. I was a regular screener. I was in uniform and came up working hand in hand with K9 through the years, working hand in hand with Jennifer and her crew on certain projects and whatnot. And I just recently was promoted to manager. So myself and another young lady, she started in 2002 with me, and we both were promoted about 2.5 years ago. So we've been in the industry for about 18 years now with TSA. There's about 47,000 officers nationwide. That includes Alaska, as well as some of the islands and Hawaii. So there is opportunity to travel. There's opportunity to be on our national deployment team. Whenever anything happens, a natural disaster, we have officers who we send out to go and help those airports, so that those families who are dealing with the whatever may be happen, whether it's a hurricane, whether it be a tornado, we send our officers down so that we can help. So we're one big family, so that those officers in that state or in that area can take care of personal business, while our officers who travel can still support the operation, so that our nation's traveling system is still secured and you guys can fly regardless of what's going on. So Jennifer, I will pass it back over to you.
Sure. I think it was an excellent point that Robert made, that we have about 37,000 officers that TSA employs. The inspector group is about 1,500. So domestically, we have about 1,500 inspectors. I don't know our international count, but the rest is smaller because those are isolated. But again, like Robert said, the opportunities are endless. I was an inspector for five or 6 years before being promoted to supervisor. I've been a supervisor now for a number of years. I think around 15 now. But we all do work as a team. Everything going on at the airport, there's somehow interaction with so many different other government entities, companies, tenants. Everything is intertwined together. And it's definitely its own city, its own family, and it's a very fast-paced environment. So, I think anyone looking to be in the aviation industry, if you like that fast-paced environment, you're headed the right direction. Most definitely.
I will also say there's also room to grow. There's been people who've come to TSA and they've moved to they've become FAMs, they've become a part of the CIA. We had someone, FBI agent, they were one of our canine officers who she went on to become, to go with the FBI. So it's definitely, as Jennifer was saying, an opportunity to move around. Myself coming up through the ranks, every single position you can think of to now management. Some people don't take I didn't think this was going to be a career. I thought I was just going to get a job, and it just kept going and going. And there's other officers who come in and they're just a regular officer. And when I say a regular officer, I mean the blue uniforms that you see on the floor when you travel. And now they're off to bigger and better things, for them and their families. So there's definitely room to navigate through the aviation field with coming with TSA.
That's right. Working for the federal government, there are a lot of opportunities. And like I mentioned, when I was just getting out of school and at a career fair, I was looking at all those government agencies, and I wasn't expecting to see FAA. But I'm really glad I did, because it's been really an excellent 21 years for me.
Just want to jump in really quickly, and yes, both of you have such strong examples of the winding paths that you can get to get into aviation and all its different aspects. Mr. Davis, you mentioned FAMs. I'm wondering if you could talk more about what that is and what they do.
Jennifer, you could probably give more of a definition of what they do, but it's a federal air marshal. Those are your officers who are on planes that you don't know they're on your plane, and they're on, a lot of times they're on certain particular flights for whatever the reason may be, and they're carrying, of course, and the traveling public has no clue. They're there for our safety when you're in the air. And Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you so that you can kind of get in more depth of how you go about that.
Absolutely. This is a particularly interesting position. So the air marshals did exist prior to 9/11. The numbers are classified. Those aren't released to the public, but it was a significantly smaller group. Since 9/11, of course, our air marshal population we have much more, but those are our law enforcement officers, like Robert said, that are on commercial flights, and their objective is to ensure the security of those flights. They are covert, so nobody should know who they are unless there's a major security incident and they need to break cover to protect the security of the aircraft. They are our last resort, really, in protecting our flights. So. I will say before our time is up, any positions within TSA or within the government, usajobs.gov is where you're going to find them. So any of the positions that we mentioned, all of the vacancies will be posted on usajobs.gov, not just for TSA, but all government-wide.
Excellent. Yes, and it sounds, if you get something entry level, there are so many opportunities to keep moving up and expanding your career and taking it in a direction that interests you. Awesome. Well, thank you both so very much for being here. Mr. Davis, it was lovely to meet you. Ms. Brassel, good to see you again. I'm going to send you back to the attendee side now. And next up, we have someone that I think you are going to find very interesting. So kind of building off a career in security, there are careers in other intelligence positions, other governmental roles in the aviation industry. And so I would like to introduce you to Ms. Jennifer Gritton. She's a former accident investigator and current aeronautical analyst with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency right here in St. Louis. So Ms. Gritton, I will hand it off to you now.
So I think Amy's probably giggling a little bit because I have to do this from my car. So I'm going to apologize for that in advance, but I cannot do Zoom from inside my facility due to the classification level and stuff. So sorry I'm in a car, but hopefully you guys can hear me loud and clear. My name is Jennifer Gritton. I have a little bit of an interesting career path in terms of the aviation world. I kind of grew up in an airport. My dad was in the Navy and I've always kind of been around aviation. So I knew that was the path I wanted to take. But I didn't really want to be a pilot. So my undergrad was in business. And when I graduated from Ohio State, I went into a company that did accident investigation. So not necessarily NTSB related or FAA related, but kind of after the fact, working with attorneys and insurance companies for litigation that would happen kind of subsequently a few years or so after an accident would happen. I was originally their office manager and did kind of all of their case management, working with attorneys directly. And then I kind of decided I wanted to dive deeper into aviation. So I went and got what's called a human factors degree. So if you think a little bit of physiology and psychology, but all geared toward aviation, I really was interested in kind of the psychology piece and how pilots think and how we make decisions. And so I went and got a master's degree in that. And I also got a master's degree in safety systems from Emory-Riddle, and started kind of doing human factors expert work for the same company. So really I was looking at things like, what is the medical history of a pilot? What kind of decision-making processes do they exhibit? And kind of piecing together along with the other experts on what leads a pilot to having an aircraft accident. Again, it was a kind of an after the fact business. So a lot of it was kind of researching and digging deep into something for someone who might not be around anymore, right? Not all accidents end with the pilot still being alive. So it was definitely a challenge, but a very good learning experience on what it's like to kind of piece together somebody's world from documents and research and all that good stuff. The expert witness actually that I worked with directly, he was a pilot. He'd been a pilot his whole life, was in the Navy his whole for a 20-year career. And he was specializing in kind of flight path reconstruction. So looking at things like radar data, things like weather, the certifications that the person had, and piecing those things together and then combining all of the research that all of the experts did to produce reports to support attorneys when they would go to courts for cases. After that, I actually was a professor at St. Louis University in their aviation department. So again, kind of like the other speakers have said, my career path wasn't kind of your standard. I was in the same career the whole time. I kind of capitalized on my education and I capitalized on that experience and went and taught human factors at SLU. And I also taught our team resource management classes and then our statistics classes. So that was a great learning experience as well. It kind of opened my eyes to some additional research and things, some other aspects of piloting that maybe I wasn't totally familiar with, which was great. And then from there, I actually ended up, as Amy mentioned, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So I know Jennifer previously kind of mentioned the intelligence community and some of the government agencies that you can work for. NGA is part of the intelligence community. It is one of those agencies that sits with the CIA, FBI, et cetera. So what I specifically, where the area I work in is called the Aeronautical Analysis or Aeronautical Navigation Office. And what we do is we actually provide all the navigational data for the military and DoD worldwide. So if you think about any military transport aircraft to include Air Force One, we are providing the data that helps them navigate the globe. So think of, if you know what a car map looks like to drive around the country, we provide the maps to navigate around the skies for the military pilots. We also provide all of the data that would go into kind of their autopilot systems. So there's a number of things that we do within our agency. When I first got here, I started out as an aeronautical analyst. So I was actually processing the data from host countries that would go into our systems to be kind of worked and coded for those aircraft. So that's kind of where I started. And then from there, I actually became the aeronautical tradecraft manager. So I actually was managing all the professional development and tradecraft development to include all the technical skills for our workforce. And it's a pretty decent sized workforce. Like Jennifer's mentioned before, it's classified on the number of people, but we have a pretty substantial workforce that works this mission because we are processing worldwide data. So I did that for a few years. And then I have since moved on to being actually a manager of a 13-person team that manages a very specific part of the world. So we do everything from processing the data from those host countries, but also supporting all sorts of intelligence missions that we have to provide data to military so that they can go in and out of some pretty interesting places worldwide. So our mission, basically, it's in our name, it's safety of navigation. So we are making sure that people can navigate the globe safely without incident, making sure the data is accurate. We also have a piece that's a little bit different than commercial providers in that we validate the data. So not only are we looking at the data that comes from different countries, but we're also looking at, is the data correct? And if it's not correct, then we work with those host nations to kind of get what information needs to be updated. We have a very specific team that liaisons between those host nations. They travel the globe to make sure we're getting the most accurate data to pass along to those DoD officers so that we can continue to support missions like the war on terrorism and all sorts of other things around the globe. So that's kind of a little bit of the background. I would say that Amy probably says my career is a little bit unique because I have a little sampling of a lot of things. I never really wanted the traditional route, which I think is great. And I would say that a lot of the people that I work with have come from a lot of different backgrounds. So we have people that have come as military pilots, people that have come from the commercial sector as pilots. We've had air traffic control. We have airport management people. We have a few people that actually worked at Lambert with Liz. I know she was one of the first presenters. So we have kind of a wide variety. We also have people that have graduated right out of school and come from airport management degree programs or piloting programs. I would say that the NGA, the world is kind of your oyster. If you come from an aviation related field or an aviation related job, typically you're going to fit in pretty well here. We can train you on a lot of our trade crafts. We are all FAA credentialed, so we spend a lot of time in on-the-job training so that we can have that credentialing, which kind of sets us apart as a level 1 provider of data. So kind of a crazy journey, but I would say that NGA, to Jennifer Brassel's point, is if you're interested, USA Jobs is the place to find all of that information. The job code for Aero specifically would be Aeronautical Analyst, but as we move towards a more data-centric world in aviation, we're also looking for data scientists, data processing, people that can manage big data, as well as GIS. So we're looking at people who specialize in mapping, because obviously we need all of those components at NGA to make us successful. So I'll pause for a minute and see if Amy has any specific things she'd like to ask me.
I do want to open it up for question and answer for our viewers. So if you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A feature below.
I'm going to open my car door really fast because it's very hot in this car. I'm so sorry, guys.
Yes, thank you for meeting with us from your car today.
Yes, I wish I could do it from inside a building, but I had to be at work today, so.
So Ms. Britton, can you, I know NGA is expanding in St. Louis and there's going to be a whole new campus.
Yeah.
With that, are there positions that are considered entry level that one could work their way up? Or is it vital that, someone comes in with a specific education?
No, I think that we have both, right? We have those that you can come in as an entry level, and that doesn't have to necessarily be in the aeronautical field. We have a wide variety of jobs. We have all the standard departments you would see in a quote unquote corporate environment, from HR to business relations to communications. I would say from an aeronautical perspective, you most certainly probably need to have some kind of background in aviation, whether that's just an education from a university or college. You could probably come in with a substantial amount of flight experience too, or military. We have a lot of military people. I'm so sorry, it's probably really loud now. We have a lot of military people too that come in. So I would say from aero perspective, you need a little bit of aviation background, obviously, to set you apart in terms of the resume. But NGA does kind of a neat little thing for USA Jobs in that we do open postings. So we kind of just run an open posting for a lot of our entry-level positions all the way up, where it's just a repository. So you can submit your resume to the repository, and we will hold it in queue, and then we kind of process in big masses and select, large numbers of people as we need them. So.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question that came in of all of your various careers and jobs in aviation. What was the most interesting one?
Oh goodness, that's hard because they're all interesting for various reasons. I would probably be, my top one would be obviously investigating plane crashes. It's different every day. You're looking at different cases, and for me personally, looking into the psychological aspect of things is really where my interests lie. With that said, I will say that working at SLU was amazing in the sense that I got to really interact with students, and teaching is kind of something that I've always loved. So that was a great opportunity for me. And NGA has been amazing. I've been here for 5 years, and I've had a great opportunity to work my way up through a number of different jobs and experiences. And it's given me, I wasn't familiar with the intelligence community at all. This was a very new thing for me. I had never even really heard of NGA until probably 7 years ago, when I actually did some research with them from SLU's perspective with NGA. And since I've come here, it's challenging, but it's interesting, and it's incredibly rewarding. I mentioned before that I'm kind of a Navy brat. My dad was in the Navy, so NGA is a personal mission for me, is making sure that my family can navigate the globe safely. So I kind of own this one a little bit more, I think, than I have previous jobs. So they're all interesting for different reasons, but this one's I'm pretty passionate about this one for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And I want everyone to know, I did not plan this with how seamlessly, our different presenters today have either worked together in the past, or all of these different careers within the industry are collaborative. And yes, it is a small community because everybody is working together. So thanks. We got another question. I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. How do you feel about the international aspect of your current work, where you're dealing with data from all over the globe? And what do you think about it?
So I think it's, and I'm probably not the subject matter expert on all the agreements that we have to go through and all the hoops we have to jump through to kind of pull data from various countries. And I think it probably goes without saying that each country we have to treat differently, and the way that relationship goes between our liaisons and our international affairs departments and our communications departments, and the way that we write up agreements and contracts and all sorts of things. For me, we couldn't do this mission without the structure in place that we have with the various countries around the world. We would need thousands and thousands and thousands of more people to go collect all this data. So I think we as kind of the US and vice versa, it's a symbiotic relationship in that they depend on us for our data and we depend on them for their data. But I'll reiterate that the reason that sets us apart from a lot of other people is that we validate everything. So I know that people sometimes are like, well, X country could send you data, and how do you know it's right? I get that question a lot when I give presentations. That's why we validate it. We make sure that we're giving out the most accurate data, and we have a number of methods that we use to validate that. And I can't go into super detail, but it's just a piece of that component. But like I said, we couldn't do this without getting some of those agreements on data from other countries. And we with countries like England and Australia, those are some of our partners. And so we share a lot of the workload in terms of processing their data and using their data and vice versa. So there are a few countries that obviously, we're, I'll say, better friends with, but that help us. But yeah, I think when you hear international data, it probably raises the hair on the back of your neck a little bit in terms of some of the countries you can think of worldwide, but we do the due diligence and we have to, so.
Awesome. It sounds like such fascinating work that you do day in and day out. And, also for me personally, it sounds intriguing because you can't talk about it all. And
yeah, it makes it, you have to like check your brain on what you can and can't say sometimes, so.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us and for physically going out to your car to take
absolutely, yeah,
your call. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks. And if anyone has any questions, Amy's going to give you my email, so feel free to email me directly and I'll get to it.
Definitely.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right, everybody. So that does conclude our live career exploration sessions, but we do have a couple of recorded presentations that I'm going to get set up in just a moment. Our first session is recorded from one of our current SLU Aviation Science faculty members, Dr. Gajapriya Tamal-Selvan, and her PhD student researcher, David Spector. So they have a presentation to share about what an aviation researcher does in the academic field, what they explore, and her work. And then Mr. Spector will demonstrate flying the flight simulator that they use within their lab space.
Hello everyone, I'm Gajapriya, Assistant Professor in the Department of Aviation Science at Parks College, St. Louis University. I want to share my education background. I graduated with my PhD in Aviation Science from Florida Institute of Technology, where I specialized in aviation safety and human factors. I had my master's in Avionics Engineering from Madras Institute of Technology, India, and I had my bachelor's in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Anna University, India. I would like to talk about my research areas of expertise. The first one, pilot selection, training, and retention. So whenever you experience a delay in airports, it's always connected to adverse weather situations or air traffic control delay, but now there comes a new reason called pilot shortage. Last summer, you might have seen in the news that Spirit Airlines, they don't have enough pilots to fly their passengers. Likewise, by 2022, a record number of 18,000 pilots who are going to retire from flying. So it's a significant workforce that's retiring in the commercial aviation industry. So I want to build a prediction model for pilots' likelihood to quit flying, to see what are the factors that are associated with pilots' decision to quit flying. Regional airlines, they always serve as recruiting pipeline for major airlines. But the turnover among the regional airlines are much higher when compared to the pilots who fly for major airlines. So with this research, I'll be able to propose recommendations to retain pilots in the industry of like better pay, retention bonus, employee benefits, etc. So with that, the pilot shortage issue will be addressed. My second area of expertise, aviation physiology. Pilots, they are much used to the routine situation, and when they encounter any emergencies, most of the inexperienced pilots, they don't have the ability to tackle the in-cockpit issues. The emergency situations include hypoxia, bird strike, adverse weather situations, etc. So I want to build a human experimentation toolkit to assess cognitive workload, pilots' decision-making skills, and other associated factors by evaluating their physiological, behavioral, and cognitive changes among pilots during their in-flight emergencies. And my third area of expertise, aviation safety. Safety is always a key element in the aviation industry. When you talk to any professional who work for aviation industry, whether it's commercial or military, they always stress on the importance of safety. So here I study different elements of aviation safety, like runway safety, flight safety, safety management systems, fatigue management system. So with that, I'll be able to propose recommendation. With that, we'll be able to avoid any aviation accidents or incidents in the future. And in this area, I'm much interested in studying the relationship between increase in automation and how it is associated with degradation of manual flying skills among pilots. One good example would be Boeing 737 MAX. So the pilots, they experienced emergencies because of the software changes associated with MCAS system, but they were not able to tackle, which subsequently ended in two major airline disasters recently. So I would like to study where the balance lies between increase in automation and diminishing manual flying skills among the pilots. So to study that relationship, I focus my research on flight deck systems, electronic flight bags, approach charts, and simulated training systems. So we conduct all these above mentioned areas of expertise at ASAP Lab. So it stands for Aviation Safety, Aviation Physiology, and Ergonomics Lab. It's located in McDonnell Douglas Hall, 1046. So our mission is to evaluate pilots' cognitive workload and decision-making skills, and also associated human factors during in-flight emergencies, and also their training sessions by assessing their physiological, behavioral, and cognitive characteristics of pilots. To study and to fulfill our mission, we focus our research on human factors, aeronautical decision-making, manual flying skills, cockpit automation, aviation safety, aviation physiology, aeromedical research, and pilot selection, training, and retention in commercial aviation. So at ASAP Lab, we have a wide range of equipment. The first one, Elite PI 1000 Advanced Aviation Training Device. So it's an advanced flight simulator, and a Tobii Pro Glasses 2. It's an eye tracking sensor. Shimmer 3 GSR Plus. It's a galvanic skin response sensor, and Emotive Epoch Plus 14-channel electroencephalogram. It's an EEG sensor, and Value continuous ring pulse oximeter. So we'll talk about each equipment in detail. The first one, Elite PI 1000 Professional Flight Simulator. It's a FAA approved training device, and it has different configurations, single and multi-engine. It encompasses high fidelity Garmin G1000 flight deck panel, and it incorporates different flight configuration ranging from Cessna models, Beechcraft Baron, and Diamond models. Also, you can choose from a wide variety of airport categories. You can practice your flying session at JFK or Orlando International, and you can choose different runways to practice your session. These are some features with this high fidelity flight simulator available in our lab. So the next one, Tobii Pro Glasses. It's a second generation eye tracking glasses available in the market. As you can see from the picture, it's a wearable head mounted eye tracking tool. So it looks like regular glasses, but it has advanced cameras on it. With that, we'll be able to collect data to evaluate student pilots' eye behavior, to see the pilots where they are fixing their visual gaze during flight. We'll be recording different eye tracking metrics like fixation, where they are fixing their visual gaze, fixation duration, where they are, how long they are fixing their gaze, and fixation count, how many times they are fixing their gaze, and pupil dilation. So when you put pilots in a highly stressful situation or emergencies or adverse weather situations, their pupil tends to dilate. So with eye tracking glasses, we will be able to capture that. And for example, if we put a sleep deprived pilot in a cockpit, in a flight simulator device, the pilots, they tend to blink faster and higher. With eye tracking glasses, we will be able to capture both blinks and blink rate. The next one, galvanic skin response. It's a finger, electrodes, and wrist-based sensor. So with this sensor, we'll be able to measure skin conductivity. If the pilots, if they are emotionally aroused or under stress, if they are happy, if they are anxious, if they feel scary, we'll be able to capture those emotions with GSR sensor. When the pilots feel those emotions, if they feel anxious or stressed, their sweat glands tend to secrete more, and GSR sensor will capture those signal inputs and integrate those inputs with ECG, electrocardiography. With that, we'll be able to measure heart rate, electromyography, EMG. With that, we'll be able to measure muscle movements and respiration data. Then EEG, it's a wearable head-mounted electroencephalogram. With this sensor, we'll be able to detect cognitive process and mental workload, to see the pilots, how they think, and how they balance their mental workload, how they manage to come out of a difficult situation. If the pilots, if they were given a high workload situation or stressful situation, we'll be able to measure how alert they are, and if a sleep deprived pilot, how drowsy they are, and for a high workload condition, how motivated are these pilots to complete their task, and also how engaged they are flying to complete that task. So these are some of the metrics that we'll be able to measure with EEG sensor, and it's a 14-channel EEG, and we'll be able to capture signal inputs from all lobes of the human brain, frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. The last one, pulse oximetry. It's a continuous wearable ring pulse oximeter. With that, we'll be able to measure pilots' heart behavior. If the pilots, if they are put in a stressful or high workload situation, their heart rate will be higher, their heart tends to beat faster. With this sensor, we'll be able to measure blood oxygen saturation and heart rate continuously. With that, we'll be able to see if the pilots, if they experience any symptoms of hypoxia. So these are my contact details. If you have any questions, or if you're interested in knowing more about the research, or when you are here at Parks, if you want to get yourself involved in research, please contact me. And thank you. Thank you for listening.
Here we are at St. Louis Downtown Airport, and we are in the PI-1000 Elite Flight Simulator. And if you can tell by the visual representation by the 3 screens here that we are on runway 12, heading east. And to verify that, I can look at my pilot flight director, or the PFD that we use as an acronym, and I can see on our compass heading that we are in fact heading 12, which is really means 120 on a 360 scale. So there's 360 degrees in a circle. True north is 36, heading 36, and easterly direction is 090, and so we're a little bit southeasterly at heading 120. So I've got all of my instrumentation set up. The engines are started. It's a clear, beautiful day. There's no weather. And so we're going to turn on the sound and we're going to make a takeoff. And then we will reset ourselves on a 5 nautical mile short final, and we'll see if we can bring the simulator in for a landing. Okay, here we go. We're going to release the parking brake and we're going to push the throttle up. And I'm looking to make sure that I get in my green band on my RPM. And I'm going to release my brakes. And here we go, we start to roll. And I'm going to use my rudder pedals, which my feet are on, left and right, to keep the nose centered on the runway until we take off. And I'm watching my airspeed indicator. And we're coming up on 50 knots, 60 knots, 70 knots, and we're going to rotate. And we start to climb out at 80 knots. I'm going to raise my flaps. I'm going to make sure the flaps go up. I'm going to raise my landing gear. And we're going to climb out and get a little altitude. We're already at 500 feet. And you can see the nose is up a little bit. I'm going to bring the nose up. We're at 90 knots. I'm going to bring the nose up to about 5 degrees. And we're going to see if we can climb out at about 90 knots. And now my airplane is in a clean configuration, meaning the flaps are up and the landing gear is up, and now I'm building a little speed. I'm at 95 knots. I want to climb up a little bit higher. And we're going to start to turn and work our way back to the airport, and we will set ourselves up on a final approach, a 5 nautical mile final approach. And our little airplane works its way back to the airport. Okay, here we are on a 5 nautical mile final, and I am lowering my flaps and putting my gear down and letting some of my speed bleed off. So I'm going to bring my throttles back a little bit and try to line up with the runway. We are at 1,700 feet above the ground. And we are doing about 80 knots. flaps the rest of the way. By putting the flaps down, that allows me to fly a little bit slower but still maintain a lot of lift. And that's the computer letting me know that I'm 500 feet above the ground.
Caution, obstacle. Caution, obstacle. Caution, obstacle. Caution, obstacle. Caution, obstacle.
So that's the
Caution,
computer letting
obstacle.
me know that I'm close to a tower that's nearby. And another successful landing. Apply my brakes, which are part of my rudder pedals. And bring my throttles back. And set my parking brake. And flight's complete.
All right, we hope that you enjoyed that presentation and demonstration from SLU's ASAPE lab. Mr. Spector was in a flight simulator, which our student pilots do use as part of their training, but he also demonstrated how that's a vital tool in aviation research, and particularly the aviation research that Dr. Tomelselvan does. And just to emphasize that there's still so much more to learn about people and human factors in the aviation system, and to keep our standard of safety up. So now we are approaching the last of our career exploration sessions. We will be hearing from Captain Maria Eberly, who has flown for American Airlines for over 30 years, and she graciously recorded a presentation for us today. She has many, many words of advice for you, and we hope you enjoy.
Good morning, ladies. My name's Maria Eberly, and I'm here to talk to you about the best job that there could possibly be. I am an airline pilot for American Airlines. I've been flying for 32 years with the airlines, and I flew for 10 years before that, getting myself trained and ready to get this career. I'd like to talk about what a typical day would be for me. I would start out here in St. Louis, go to the airport. I would check the weather. I would then I'd go out to my airplane. I would check my airplane, make sure that everything is working properly. As the passengers come on, we would greet the passengers, and then we'd push back from the gate and take off for our flight. And we may go from St. Louis to Charlotte, spend about an hour in Charlotte, fly down to Orlando, spend an hour in Orlando, turn around, go back to Charlotte, then go up to New York City for the night. And if it's a long overnight, company would take us downtown, and we would get to stay downtown New York City, get to do a little bit of sightseeing while we're there. The next morning we'd get up, fly from New York, maybe to Philadelphia, then to Seattle, spend the night in Seattle. We might have time to go downtown Seattle, see the West Coast for a few hours, and then the next day fly from Seattle back to Charlotte, and the trip would be over. One of the main questions I have is, how do I get qualified for a job like this? And what you do is you start taking flying lessons. It can be done at a small airport, like here in St. Louis. You can go to Chesterfield Airport, or you can go to a school like St. Louis University, where the flying is integrated with your entire college curriculum. And the next big question is, how expensive is it? It is very expensive to learn to fly, but when you get a good job, you are compensated very well, and it makes it very worthwhile to have spent the time and money to get qualified for a job like this. To get money for the flying, obviously working a job is a good start. Whatever you can do to earn some money, and there are a lot of scholarships available for whatever level of flying that you're currently doing. If you go to a school like St. Louis University, where you're doing your flying incorporated into your college education, you can also take out student loans to cover the extra cost of the aviation, the flying aspect of your education. Other questions that people have is, when you take flying lessons, what you do is you go up with a flight instructor. They teach you to fly the aircraft. Then when you're capable of landing the airplane on your own, the flight instructor will actually get out of the airplane, and you take off and do some takeoff and landings on your own. Then you go back up for more lessons with your instructor, and you learn how to maneuver the aircraft. You learn to go from one city to another. They call that a cross-country flight. And then you will do a couple of cross-country flights by yourself. Then you take a written exam, and you take a check ride, and then you get your private license. Once you have your private license, you can take your friends up, your family up, and take them sightseeing. You can fly them from point A to point B, but they cannot yet pay you for that, because you're just a private pilot. To get to the point where you can be paid for that, you need to get a commercial license, which is just additional skills, more lessons. You have to become a more precise pilot. So it takes a lot more practice to get to that level. In between getting your private license and your commercial license, you get an instrument rating, which allows you to fly in the clouds, makes your license much more versatile. Once you get your commercial license, a lot of people at that point become a flight instructor, and you teach other people to fly. It's actually a lot of fun to share all the knowledge that you have learned, and also you are building flight time, because every time you go up in an airplane, you put it in a logbook so that you know how much flight time you have, which is important for when you want to get a job. And you also, as a flight instructor, you would get paid for your flying time. So instead of it being a very expensive proposition, now it is starting to be a career for you. From there, you build up your flying time. Most people go either to a corporation, and a lot of companies have their own airplanes, and they hire their own pilots. Some of those airplanes are really high performing, a lot of fun to fly. And other people will go into a commuter airline, which does the same type of job that I do, but they go to smaller cities and they fly smaller airplanes. They may seat 50 passengers, maybe 70 passengers. And then from there, when you get more flying time, you go on to a major airline. the airplane that I fly carries between 118 or 185 passengers. There are 3 versions, each one has different seating capacity. Our biggest airplane, the 787, carries 242 passengers, and the larger airplanes go for longer runs. The 787 goes to Europe and to Asia. The aircraft that I fly is a Airbus 320, and it goes all over the United States, down into Mexico, up into Canada. We go to Toronto, we go to Cancun, we go to a lot of the Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Aruba, Port-au-Prince, and out to the west. We get out to the West Coast quite a bit also, and also to the Midwest. I start my flights actually in Charlotte, North Carolina, and from Charlotte I may fly to the West Coast, I may fly up and down the East Coast, or I may fly into the Midwest. We fly, every trip is different than the previous one. One of the other things that you need to study when you're taking your lessons is about weather, and weather affects your flight. If it's a clear day, it's very easy flying. You'll have a nice scenic trip. Some days it may just be overcast. We can fly through the clouds, get up above them, and may have some sunshine on top of them. Or we may be in the clouds most of the day. Sometimes you're landing in rain, sometimes you're landing in snow. Very rarely do we land in ice. That's one of the few things that even an airline pilot does not fly into. Now I've got some more slides that I'd like to show you, and so we can take a little more time with them. Okay, this is a picture of Mount Rainier, which you can see, and you're flying right near Seattle. This is flying into Paris. Another nice thing about our job is to go to all the different cities and actually get to see most of the cities, get a feel for which ones you want to go back to on your own vacations. Here's a picture of weather. Right in the center is a pretty good thunderstorm, but from the altitude where we are, we will be flying right over that. If we're flying at a lower altitude, we would have to fly around it. We don't ever fly into a thunderstorm. One of the other careers and another path for getting your flying experience is to go military. It's a couple of fighter airplanes down in Jacksonville, Florida, getting ready to take off. Another job with the airline, not quite as much fun, but somebody has to load all the cargo. This is something that we see when we're doing our pre-flights to make sure everything is good with the airplane. We make sure there are no dents, nothing has hit the aircraft. We look at our engines, make sure that they are in good condition, that nothing has flown into them and damaged them. We look at our tires. This is one set of tires. Every aircraft has at least 3 sets of tires. Some airplanes just have 2 tires in a bunch. Some have 3 or 4 like this. This is flying over the North Atlantic in the springtime, and this is a glacier that's starting to melt for the springtime. It's another part of our aviation family is our flight attendants. This is as they're getting off the aircraft in Spain. Here are some of our mechanics. They have the covering of the engine open to look and make sure that everything inside is okay. Another possibility for a career is actually a blimp. They use them, you've seen them, I'm sure, when the Cardinals play. They fly over a lot of different sports. They fly over other things. They'll come in for an air show and just sometimes just fly around for advertising, like when there's fireworks down at the Arch. Some of the weather that we fly into, this is taking off in New York's LaGuardia Airport in sort of a foggy day and a lot of rain. Another possibility of what you can do for a career in aviation is fly a helicopter. This one is getting ready to land down at Barnes Hospital here in St. Louis. This beginning of aviation down in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Memorial to Wilbur and Orville Wright, the first pilots. And we've gone from there to the space shuttle, and obviously now the SpaceX flying up to the International Space Station. Most astronauts, if anybody's interested in being an astronaut, most astronauts are also pilots. This is 787 that I told you, 242 passengers, and flies to Europe and Asia. Another example of weather, this is after the rainstorm down in Miami with a double rainbow, and can still see some thunderclouds in the far background. Back to Mount Rainier. This is me doing a walk around. This is my son, who's also a pilot. This is indicative of a small airplane that you would start to fly in. It has 2 seats. In the front, it does have 2 seats in the back, so an observer could go with you. Much smaller than the cockpit of a jet, and give you a perspective for the size of the aircraft. Here he's about 6 feet tall, and here he is standing on the outside of the aircraft. And as I've mentioned before, every aircraft has 3 sets of tires. This one has one tire in each position. And nice example of women in aviation. We had an entire female crew. We had 2 women pilots and 3 female flight attendants. Obviously, this was at Christmas time. We have about 600 pilots at American Airlines, which is about 4% of our total pilots. We have 15,000 total, and that's pretty standard across the industry right now, but more and more of our younger and newer hire pilots are women, so it's a very great career for women. I hope to see some of you coming out to take lessons in the near future, and I hope that you can come back next year when we can actually do this in person. It's much more fun when I get your personal questions and you get whatever questions you have actually answered, but I hope I gave you a nice introduction today. I hope some of you are interested in aviation because it's a very good career. Hope to see you out flying soon. Goodbye.
Yes, I echo Captain Everly's sentiments that we do hope that we can be in person for this event again soon. But a huge thank you to her for sending in that recording, and hopefully, that got you thinking about being an airline, not just a pilot, but an airline captain. So this is the end of our career exploration session time. We want to thank you for joining us for these, and hope you have a better understanding of just a few of the multitude of career paths that are available in aviation. We just scratched the surface over the past hour and a half, and there are many more careers out there. We are now going to take a brief break until 12:30 p.m. Central Time. So please note that there has been a change to the schedule. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, our 12 p.m. presentation is canceled for today. We will return in this space at 12:30 p.m. for our keynote address from Captain Andrea Lewis, and hope you will join us then. Thanks.